Thank you, Steve, for a great introduction. Thank you all for being here. And I'm Dick Wright, and I'm an alcoholic. I'm not going to preach. That's all the preaching I'm going to do. I can preach. See this here? They're recording this. And I guess my anonymity is gone. I'm a real alcoholic. Reason I say that is because you can find me described in that book over there. And because I didn't have trouble with any other mood-changing things before I got here. I'm a real alcoholic. I suffer from the disease of alcoholism, and if I didn't do something about it, I was going to die or go mad, as Bill Wilson said. I know some people here in this group, and I'm grateful for you being here tonight. Tom, good to see you, and Wallace and the rest of you guys for renewing old acquaintances. Even Roy H. came down from High Point. They let him out. The Guilford County Sheriff's Department gave him early release so he could come down here. It is good to be here. It's good to share big events for people in Alcoholics Anonymous. I enjoy sharing what little bit of story I got to share with you. As I said, I'm a real alcoholic. I didn't have any trouble with any other thing. I can find myself in the book. I can find my disease described to a T in the book of Alcoholics Anonymous. I can find what happened to me in the book of Alcoholics Anonymous. I can find what it's like now in the book of Alcoholics Anonymous. I'm a great fan of the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. It's made a great deal of difference in my own sober life, and I know the same is true for a lot of you. Let me get some statistics out of the way for you, okay? I was born on August 19th, 1930. So before you do the math, I'll help you, okay? I'll be 68. I don't know why I live so long. I really don't. Anyway, I'm 85, soon to be 86 years old. I get around fairly well. There's little incidents in my life that my two friends who chaperoned me down here to see if I got here safely observed about 4 o'clock or so. But anyway, I'm here. I took my last drink on October 17th, 1965. So you can do the math on that, and I proudly carry a 50-year chip in my pocket because I earned it. I earned it before I got here, and I think I've earned it since I've been here. I was raised in, obviously, if I was born in 1930, you can figure out that I was raised during the Depression years, so that I was raised on a farm in upstate New York in an area called the Finger Lakes region, and that ought to tell you all you need to know about me and my upbringing and the things that I learned as a youngster from these people in this upbringing. Absolutely no reason from that I should have been an alcoholic or, as we heard earlier, a second-class citizen. There's no reason for that out of that. I'm not a big believer in victim. As I studied the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, I found out in there that I am a victim. But it didn't have anything to do with my upbringing or my exposure to those things in life before I got here. It had to do with what's described after the ABCs in that book over there, where it talks about selfishness and self-centeredness as it's moving on into step 3. And it says in there that any life run on self-will can hardly be a success, because in that condition I'm almost always in conflict with everybody and everything. And so as I look back on my life, thanks to you people and thanks to what that book says, I can tell you that I was a victim. I was a victim of selfishness and self-centeredness and of self-will, and strong self-will. It got me where I needed to get, and it helped me stay here. My father believed that all work and no play didn't hurt you a bit. Okay, and he was a strong disciplinarian, and the little country village that I grew up in was a very centralized society. I mean, hard workers, a lot of farming. You looked out of the front lawn of our old farmhouse and you saw silos and a little one-room schoolhouse and a church steeple. Everything that identified with what that little community was about. I learned good things from good people and good standard of conduct, good code of conduct, good standards. They didn't harm me a bit as I grew up. There's a lot of love in my own family. I have a sister who's 7 years younger than I am. That's all you need really to know about that upbringing. I began to have trouble with this self-will when I was young. I went to that little one-room schoolhouse. Had 6 grades in it, all first through 6th grades in that one-room schoolhouse. And I'd like to tell you that I completed that 6th grade with dignity and poise. But the self-will that was going to put me in conflict began to show itself even at that early stage, in that early days. And so I had a little conflict with the teacher. My misbehavior wasn't destructive, it was about mischief, you know, I suppose, to get attention and to show out or whatever you want. That's what bothered me about that self-will, strong self-will. And so I had to go on to the big school before my peers, before my kids in my grade. And so I'd like to tell you that I finished that with dignity and poise. But I had to leave there early, too, for the same reason that I left the little one-room schoolhouse. I just couldn't quite keep away from getting in trouble. And so I ended up finishing high school in a little town where my dad worked. And I had to ride to work with him every morning and ride home with him, and those kid things that ought to register on you. Say something's wrong, you ought to check yourself, but never did. Anyway, I went off to college in 1948, and I was in college until January 1951. The Korean War was in progress at that time, and before the military deferment came out, in 1951, I was moving up on the draft board list, and my family kept track of that. And I had put in some papers to the Air Force who'd come by the campus to do some recruiting, and I wanted to preserve what I'd put in for, and so I enlisted in the Air Force on the 2nd of January, 1951, and I was in the Air Force 11 years. Most of my alcoholism story comes through those 11 years, quite frankly. A lot of things happened. Let me go back just a minute and say there was no real drinking in my family. I didn't know about real drinking. I just began to know about what this self-will did to me and the conflicts. Now, Dr. Silkworth, in the doctor's opinion of that book, describes in 3 words the way I began to feel as a result of this. He uses 3 words: restless, irritable, and discontented. And I can tell you as I look back, that's what happened to me. I was restless, irritable, and discontented. One summer night, some guys, there was a drive-in theater up on the main highway called the Finger Lakes Drive-In. Had loudspeakers on the screen. That was before the things you put in your car window. And we'd go up there and sit down against an old fallen down apple tree out in the weeds, and we'd watch a movie. And I went up there with these guys night after night, and one night they stopped by a place called the Rainbow Inn. that we had to walk by. And they bought some stuff and took it up there with them, and they started to drink that stuff, and I could tell that they were having a much better time than I was. They were having a good time. And so back in my mind, I suppose, I thought of the fact that I better find out what's permitting them to have a good time. They're involved in the same kind of surroundings I am, yet for a little period of time they enjoyed life. So I said, I'm going to check it out. So I began to put aside a little money. And I squirreled away 86 cents. And went up to this drive-in theater and stopped by the Rainbow Inn, and I bought a quart of Roma port wine. And I pulled my T-shirt outside my overalls, and I put that down inside my overall, put my T-shirt out over, and I walked on up to that drive-in, and I sat down with those guys up against that old fallen down apple tree in the weeds, and I took the cap off that, and I started drinking. And I drank the whole thing that night. Now, I don't have to tell you that I had a bad night. I did some things that I stopped doing a while ago. I just did some unsociable things that night. I rolled around in the grass. I didn't usually do that. I puked a lot. And, I heard people say that in AA they got nauseous. I'm not sure what nauseous is. I puked, folks. I'll tell you, Roy and I were talking about an old friend of ours, Dave, who talked about that. That Colonel Corny got lodged in his nose from a long since forgotten meal. Anyway, I wet my pants that night, and I had stopped doing that sometime before. So that was another failure, another thing. And I'd like to tell you that these things stopped when we left the drive-in, but these guys took me home and they put me in that old bed up in that farmhouse, and that bed, we jumped on it so much it rolled in the middle. Once you got in it, you were stuck in there until you purposely got out. So I was stuck in there the rest of the night. I don't have to tell you, it was a bad night. And in the morning, my mother was sad, and my father was angry, and my sister was bewildered. And so I had to get that mess cleaned up, and I eventually did. I got it cleaned up. And folks, if you're alcoholic like me, you get good at that. You get good at fixing things up. And I began to hone and sharpen some fixing up tools right then. And but as I look back on it, after that event, I thought back on that, and I forgot about rolling around in the weeds and puking and being wet in my pants and those kind of things. I forgot about those. But sometime after I started to drink that, I passed through a little period of time when I was no longer restless and no longer irritable and no longer discontented, when I felt pretty good about things. The hard work didn't bother me, the sweat and dirt and dust didn't bother me, the common ore didn't bother me, gathering eggs didn't bother me. And in addition to that, I was funnier with these guys, I was wittier, I felt more comfortable. And I seemed to be able to dream about how good things were going to be someday. That's what I remembered after that event passed. I didn't remember all the bad things, but I remember that little period of time when I felt better, when I was no longer restless, no longer irritable, no longer discontented. So for a long time, I pursued that little bit of period of time. I learned about that early, and I used it a lot. I enlisted, as I said, in the Air Force on the 2nd of January, 1951, and I eventually got in a pilot training program. I got my wings, got commissioned, and I ended up flying airplanes in the Strategic Air Command. And I achieved some of those things that I dreamed about as a youngster. I achieved some of those things that fired up self-will drove me to. I achieved some other things. I met a gal down in Tampa, Florida, and I swept up, and we did it in the old-fashioned way. She and I did. We courted, okay? We got engaged. We got married. We moved in, and we had children. Okay, in that order. Now, I know that today's philosophy is different, and I recognize the fact that I'm out of step. But that's the way we did it. We did it that way. I progressed in the military. In the things that I did, I was pretty good at what I did. But also at the same time, I was restless, irritable, and discontented. And I sought out that little period of time when things would be better. And so every once in a while there'd be those events that would happen that I'd have to get fixed up. And I was able to keep them fixed up enough so that they weren't very damaging. In 1961 wasn't one of my better years. You know, that dates me a lot, but I ended up locked up in a padded room in the Air Force Hospital on Ramey Air Force Base in Aguadilla, Puerto Rico. The reason they put me there is that they didn't know what to do with me. Because I've been, now my drinking had, as Bill says in the book, reached more serious proportions. And I was no longer functional when I was doing it. I was out of business. And I began to have trouble with the military. I couldn't do what I was supposed to do. I couldn't not do what I wasn't supposed to do. And I couldn't say what I was supposed to say. And I couldn't not say what I shouldn't say. And my life became filled with narrow-minded people. And I ended up in this room on the 9th of April, 1961. And let me kind of paint a picture of this room, if you will. It's a padded room. There's security screens over all the windows and over the lights. There's a little window and door with a security screen on it. They'd watch you from that window. They'd look in on you. You'd see them, two eyes looking through at you. Over in the corner was a toilet. Like all toilets, normal toilet, except it didn't have a handle on it. So there's two things that I recognized right off the bat that were out of pattern, out of good pattern. One was there was no doorknob on the inside of the door. Had a bad sign. And then there's no flush. You can't flush your own toilet. That's another bad sign. The process was like this. You use the toilet. You see the two eyes looking in at you through the door, through the window. You'd wave to them, point to the toilet. They'd nod their head. They'd flush it from out in the hallway. Now, if you come into the program of Alcoholics Anonymous and you hear the word unmanageable, you can identify with unmanageability if you remember that toilet and no handles and them flushing it for you out in the hall. 9th of April, 1961, I ended up there the first time, and for the next 39 weeks, I was locked up somewhere. For 19 of those 39 weeks, my career spiraled, and as I say, my life was filled with narrow-minded people. And I began to have trouble after trouble after trouble. Now, folks, I couldn't not drink, and I couldn't drink. What it says in chapter 4 in the first paragraph, if when I want to quit entirely I cannot quit, that applied. That was, or if when I drink do I find I have little control over the amount I take, that also was a factor. And so I began to have trouble because I couldn't stop and I couldn't drink successfully. And so I continued to have trouble throughout 1961, almost a whole year. I ceased to be a husband. I ceased to be a father with 2 little girls. The last thing I lost was the ability to be a halfway decent military guy. But that soon destroyed itself also. And by the end of the year, they had assembled a board of general officers. That's 2 and 3 stars on their epaulet, okay, who reviewed my situation to determine whether or not I should remain on active duty military status. And they determined that I should not. And so they threw me out. On this real hefty, weighty, multi-page document that they gave me, it gives a reason in there. Folks, if you're old enough, you remember the old fabric typewriter ribbon? You had black on half of it and red on the other half. You remember those? They had put the reason that they were throwing me out, in black and in red, acute, chronic, severe alcoholism. Now, for the rest of you who are just run-of-the-mill average alcoholic, I'm worse. And I got it in writing. And the only thing that keeps me from identifying with what it says in the first paragraph of chapter 3, my unwillingness to admit that I was alcoholic, unwillingness to admit that I was different, the only thing separating from me from that was my inability to read. I can't read because I had that. Let me tell you, the military gives you a copy of everything. And I had a copy. I got a general discharge. Acute, chronic, and severe alcoholism. And I did what all good 30-year-old married men with children and no job ought to do. I moved in with my mother. Came back to the farm, moved in with my mother, gonna put life back together. And I did, eventually. Remember that self-will, that strong self-will? That strong self-will that kept me from identifying that I couldn't drink successfully and I couldn't quit successfully. That strong will that kept saying this time it's going to be different. That strong will that kept saying this description, acute, chronic, and severe alcoholism, may apply to some other people, does not apply to me. I will overcome that some way or another. That same self-will bound me into that condition for a little while longer. I eventually went to work in the insurance industry. I'd stay sober for periods of time. I'd stay dry for periods of time. Months, 2, 3, 4, maybe 5. And then for some reason or another, I'd drink again. But now every time I drank, I'm out of business. It wasn't just tonight and I'd be okay tomorrow. It was tonight, tomorrow, the next day might be okay next week if I got And I got promoted in this company job I had. I came to Greensboro, North Carolina in 1964. Moved wife and kids there. Things going well. Got a calling card, title, company car. That's good things. But I'm still alcoholic. Acute, chronic, and severe. I can't drink successfully, and I can't quit successfully. But I didn't know it. On the 11th of October, 1965, I believe it was, a Monday night, I stopped on the way home from the office at a place called The Mug in Greensboro to have a beer. That's innocent enough. Hadn't had anything to drink in a few months. One beer certainly wouldn't hurt me. Well, I had one. And the next thing I remember is Sunday morning. I'm sitting in the corner of the living room in my underwear. I'm drinking out of a quart of some brown whiskey, I'm not sure what it was, straight, chasing it with Pall-Mall cigarettes. Social drinking. Not harming a soul. Barbara wasn't talking to me about it a lot that morning, and we had talked about it a lot. The two little girls were next door where they'd been a couple of days because I was unfit to be around. And there I am again in that condition that I'd been in so many times. Now, I didn't get any notice that this was going to be a different day. You know, no notification. But as I reviewed that situation, I think, as I look back on it, I saw that condition in a little different light than I'd ever seen it before. And this time it wasn't them, and it wasn't her, and it wasn't all that stuff. It was how I reacted to life and what I used to do that. And we had become members on paper of a Methodist church in the area. If you know about being on paper, that means so you can show it to somebody. It helps with the kids. You know, we went there because of the children. I certainly didn't need it. And I didn't know who to call. So I said what I did in the beginning, how important it is for clergymen to know about us. And so I called the church after church service was out, and the minister had a chance to get back to the parsonage. I called him. His name was Marion Workman, and I told him, asked him if I could speak with him. And he said he would, and he came immediately. Immediately. And for the first time, I told somebody the truth about what was going on and what was happening. And this man looked at me with all the compassion and understanding and professionalism that they have. And he says, I can't help you. But he says, I know some people that can. Will you let me call them? And I said, call them. And he did. And two men came. One of them's name was Boyd Christopher. He belonged to that church. I knew him. The other's name, Tom and Wallace and some of the rest of you, Wade Johnson. 12 Stepney. In that living room at 3705 Normandy Road, Greensboro, North Carolina, October 17th, 1965. Textbook setting. These two men told me about feelings that they had felt, thoughts that they had thought, stuff that they drank, things that they'd done, that I thought I was the only one that had felt, thought, and done those things. One of them had that drink in 5 years, and the other one in 9 years. And I was convinced these guys had something. As the book said, it had depth and weight. Something that had depth and weight. I knew that instinctively. I didn't know what was happening, folks, but I can tell you today that I bought that hook, line, and sinker that afternoon. So they said to me, you think you can stay sober till 7 o'clock? Well, you know, I've still got some dignity, and I can't say, no, I can't stay sober till 7 o'clock at 3:30. I got to say, I think I can. So I did. They picked me up, and they took me to Burlington, North Carolina. Old Burlington group met on Sunday night, speaker meeting. Went there, and I heard a guy from Danville, Virginia speak, and I can't tell you a thing that he said, But I can tell you this, that when I met you people that night, the little group that was there, 12, 15 of you, and you shook my hand and you smiled and you told me you understood, I knew that you did. I knew you were sincere. And on the way back to Greensboro, I picked up a ship. And on the way back to Greensboro that night, Wade said, one of the things a mistake I made, so if you're new in the program, don't make this mistake. I asked Wade, how many meetings should I go to? I'm going to ask that question, folks. You're not going to like the answer, okay? So he said 7, this is before the 90 and 90 that we use today. He said 7 a week would be enough for you. He didn't ask me about my social calendar, whether or not there was any openings. I get a lot of guys that got soccer practice today. They get soccer practice and gets them away. He didn't ask me about soccer practice. He said 7 meetings a week would be enough. And he said something else that we hear around the tables of AA or from up here all the time, and that is that I never had to drink again if I didn't want to. And I knew from what had happened that day, sick as I was, incapable as I was of sorting anything out, because I'm not in good shape, folks. I've been drunk for 6 days, around the clock, hard whiskey. And I'm not in good shape, and I'm not able to put things together. But I know when he said, if you drink again, it's because you got a choice. I knew what he was saying, because I had been introduced to a couple of guys that afternoon who felt and thought and drank the same way I did, and hadn't had a drink in 5 or 9 years, and now I had come into contact with you people where these two men came to learn about a program that would permit them to do that. And that was a strong combination. And if I drank again, it was by choice. And I never drank again. No. I'd like to say it was easy. It wasn't easy when you're in the condition. Coming off of drunks like I was on was never easy. I never went to a detox, so I don't know what they are, okay? I got an idea. I've taken other people there, but I'll tell you how I detoxed myself. I detoxed myself. You walk the floor. You jerk. Don't shake, you jerk. You gasp for oxygen. You sweat all the time. You don't sleep. You don't eat. And you keep doing that for a little while. And eventually things got better. And I did, and things got better. And I went to the O. Henry group the next night on Monday night, and went to Open Door on Tuesday, and went to Fisher Park on Wednesday, and Tom will remember some of these. He was back in Greensboro at that time. In fact, he went to Dogwood on Thursday, Lawndale on Friday, went to Pepsi on Saturday. He started it. He started that group. They called it a Young People's Group. That was obviously a misnomer now because he's no longer young. But that's a pattern I did, and I never drank again. I began to repair the damage. Began to work these steps like these two guys outlined. Began to do the things that you people taught me and told me to do. I was serious about this thing. I was serious about it. I understood how desperate I was. I tried those other things. I detoxed myself. I'm going to tell you, that left a lasting impression on me. I don't know what it is to detox easily, but I can tell you the kind of detox I did left a lasting impression that I'll never forget. A lot of things began to happen. I began to The second night I was at El Henry, and there was a tall guy in there. His name was Bill McKeever. And Bill McKeever told his story. And he'd been on vacation for 2 weeks, and he had a 2-week growth of beard. And I thought, he's going to get up there, and he's going to tell me that he hadn't had a drink. Looked like he has. Sure enough, he hadn't. He told me a story. He had a personnel department at Sears Mail Order out on Longdale Drive. And he told me about going out to his car in August and laying down across the front seat at the end of the day and opening his glove compartment and taking out a non-opened pint of vodka, so hot that when he broke the seal, it went and took 4 or 5 swigs out of there till he could get well enough to start the drive home. I said, this guy's alcoholic. He qualified. That night I heard at the O. Henry group, 1 drink's too many and a barrel's not enough. I thought, that's smart. I wish I'd have thought of that. I wish I'd have thought of that. The gal that said that was, I'm going to bring back memories to Tom I. Her name was Ruby Westmoreland. And when she read that from the preamble, 1 drink's too many and a barrel's not enough, I filed that away. That was an important piece of information. I began to fall in love with you people and what you represented. And every time I came, you acted like I'd been around 100 years. And I kept coming back, and I began to work the steps, and I began to work with other guys. And I've been doing that for a while, without hesitation. I'm reading a document that 2 men, Bill White and Ernie Kurtz, wrote back in 1960 or 2014, called the having a brain, whatever it is, but how come we've remained solid over all these years, these 8+ decades? The Resilience of Alcoholics Anonymous is the title. I've been reading that. And so I asked, and I'm proud to say that I understand 100% what they say that has kept us resilient. And I understand too, when I look at your people, the program that you outline in that book and the ones you talk about at meetings and being here with you, I understand the resilience that you permitted me to have to continue to stay here and to do what you told me to do. Not drink, work with others, pray, get better, carry the message. I've been married 61 years. Now that's not a record, but it ain't bad. It ain't bad in AA, I'll tell you that. She's still with me. She was there when I left. Tim and Jack and I drove with. She's still there, worried about me. But, those 2 little girls are grown up. They got an education thanks to you people in this program. I was able to provide them with that. I've given them away to a couple of guys. One of them kept them. One of them kept her and the other one didn't. But got 6 grandchildren. Good guys, good kids. Got a little 24-year-old granddaughter who's autistic that I love to be with and love to read her Arthur books and, 7-year-old stuff. But she's got some problems like her grandfather has. Privilege that I wouldn't have had hadn't been for you people. I've kept employed gainfully, retired a long, long time ago. Been on Social Security a long, long time. For those of you that are contributing, keep doing it. Appreciate it. Just a lot of good things. You know, the next Sunday after the 17th of October, I went back to that church. And I don't know why I went back there. I felt I owed an obligation to Marion Workman, maybe. Churches seem to leave a good memory on it. I don't remember getting a lot of trouble in it, including that little country church with a steeple. So I went back. And I've been going back regularly and religiously ever since. Do I mandate that for people I sponsor or associate with? Not at all. That's a choice you make all by yourself. It's been good to me and good for me. No conflict. No conflict. Blended in well. I've left some things in the 8th, 4th, and 5th step that I couldn't get rid of there. I've left some stuff there that I couldn't get rid of here. So it's been good to me. I don't know what else to tell you about life. Life is pretty good. I got some medical situations that I deal with, and you have them when you get to be my age. You can't avoid them, I'll tell you. You're going to have them. Some of them are physical, some of them are, most of them are physical, to tell you the truth. I'm about to get earmarked for my 3rd pacemaker because the battery on the 2nd one is going to run out. I don't want it to get too low. I don't have an alternate switch that I can use. I've overcome prostate cancer, melanoma. You name it, I've had it, I guess. Still active, still do things that I probably got no business doing. Love you people, love this program. Associate with you people because I do love you. When I leave my driveway at 7 o'clock at night, plus or minus, and head here, I feel good because I know I'm going to be with people that I can rely on, that I can depend on, who apparently love me for what I am, and where I'll feel good and where I'll learn. And when I leave an hour later, I know that my dreams have been fulfilled. So I think I'm going to continue to do what I've been doing. Seems to have worked so far. On the wall in my living room, in the den, I got an honorable discharge, which the military gave me after I'd communicated with them about my situation. And let me tell you what I did in that communication with them. I attributed everything that had happened to me, vocationally, family-wise, and community-wise, and everything to the program of Alcoholics Anonymous and what you people gave me. And one day I got in the mail a big envelope and a letter, and here's essentially what they said. Because of what you said and what you've done, we're going to change anything on your DD-214, military people know what that is, that referred to anything but honorable. We're going to change that to honorable. And we're pleased to enclose a brand spanking new honorable discharge. Now, the other discharge I had hidden in the back of the drawer. This one I got framed. That's one of the rewards. There are many. I'm going to keep coming back, folks. I hope you do. Thank you.